Hello and welcome to Wine with Wita, the podcast that is dedicated to engaging with health professionals and caregivers in meaningful discussions. I'm your host, Rita Shamoon, or shall I say, Wita. I'm a pediatric speech pathologist and I am so excited to have you here. Each week, we deep dive into connecting you with caregivers and healthcare professionals, sharing their insights, stories, and key takeaways to help support you with your child's diagnosis and journey. Whether you are a parent, healthcare professional, a lifetime learner, or simply a wine enthusiast, you're in the right place. So let's sit back and relax and enjoy today's episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Wine with Wita. Tonight or today, I am very excited to have this gorgeous woman on. Now, I met the most beautiful woman named Deena Kelaita, who is a clinical nutritionist, probably about 6 months ago or so. We connected online through a parent workshop. We love the concept of wine together, and we just connected over gorgeous sushi down at Ramsgate, Sydney. And I just felt this energy about Deena that I felt like she spoke my love language. We spoke the same language together about wellness, community, building relationships with individuals, but also supporting parents as well. And I just left that dinner feeling like I found a friend, like I found
Aw.
someone who I deeply connected to, and I am
Yeah.
so excited to have her on this evening to share her wisdom, but also share her energy that you will hear through your ears when you're listening to this gorgeous episode. So welcome, Deena, to Wine with Wita.
Thank you. Thank you, Rita. Thank you for that beautiful introduction. Thank you for having
You're,
me. It's a pleasure
no,
to be here with you tonight.
thank you. Thank you for sharing your time. I really believe people giving their time is the greatest gift that you can give anyone. Now, as I said in my little intro, we connected over wine and food as always,
Mhm.
and we discussed the importance of supporting families and particularly supporting parents. Now, tell us about what you do as a clinical nutritionist and specifically with holistic health.
Sure. So I've been a holistic clinical nutritionist, a registered clinical nutritionist now for almost 10 years. Um, I got into this industry stemming from my own health issues as a teenager, and that sort of um, evolved into me wanting to help others through similar journeys who are experiencing similar journeys. And so I very quickly realized that the medical model, excuse me, the orthodox medical model that we are so used to, which is a pill for an ill, didn't work for me and doesn't work for many people. Now, I know that um, allopathic medicine can be life-saving, and I won't deny that. But there are other instances where simply changing your diet, changing your lifestyle can not only prevent disease, which is the main focus that I focus on, but it can also help support disease and health issues. And so very quickly, I learned that practicing mind, body, soul connection and treating all of these various areas that make up a person holistically, that is the ultimate foundation that we need to address when we're trying to support someone through disease and poor health. And so what that looks like for me in clinic is trying to get to the root cause of what causes these issues with people. And certainly that means a lot of investigations on my part using uh, various functional testing, gut health testing, genetic testing, looking at multiple different types of tests. And the most important process, I feel, is meeting with the person one-on-one and going through a
Mm.
really extensive health history. So asking them a lot of questions. A doctor might spend a good 5-10 minutes with you, but a clinical nutritionist or practitioner like myself will invest a good 1 hour with you, getting to understand how you got to that place in your life and how I can help you.
Yeah, that is amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And I love how you said the pill for the ill. And I
Mm,
guess I'm nearly 40, and growing up, I was taught that doctors' ways are the best ways. And yes, there are many ways that they support health in their own way. And I guess, but when you are so in tune with your own body and you start to listen to what your body's telling you, which I have over the last, say, 6 to 7 years, you start
mm,
to look at what is my body telling me before I go to the doctor? How can I holistically treat my body? How can I listen to my hormone health, my gut health, my overall energy? What's that telling me, and what can I do to help myself out? Now, I'm sure this is something we'll talk about tonight, but what do you find are common, not necessarily symptoms, but patterns with parents that have those repeated health difficulties that they come to see you?
yeah, great question. And I do often see many parents within my clinical practice, um, both parents, parents of kids with special needs, and parents with, general children, which can also be, have special needs of their own. But
Mm.
yeah, the main issue that I commonly see with parents um, are usually health issues that are associated with chronic stress. Usually,
Mm.
and this can look like things like hormonal imbalances, fertility issues, anxiety. Definitely, that's a very common issue that I commonly see in practice. Thyroid issues as well, and a lot of the time, this is the area of health that I specialize in is gastrointestinal health, so gut health, and I would say that would be the most common issue that I see in clinical practice with parents, and also just generally as a whole.
So when you said gut health or gastro difficulties,
Mm.
is that more of a symptom of underlying anxiety, stress, or everything pretty much like compounded on top of each other and it's being displayed through the gut? Or will it specifically be gut health, which will then link to everything else?
A little bit of all of that, really. So one of my heroes of medicine is Hippocrates, and
Mm.
he coined the term "all disease begins in the gut." And over the last 10 years, the last 20 years that I've actually been practicing natural health, I can very much see that in action. And so, a lot of my investigative work is done with gut microbiome testing.
I'm
So,
sorry, Dina. Sorry, my daughter just interrupted me.
oh, okay.
She's gone now. Did you see her peekabooing through the door?
I actually didn't know. How cute.
No, because my
She needs
daughter
help.
is really unwell. I'm just gonna go check up on her. I'll just pause it for one moment.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Thank you everyone for that little break, and it's quite hilarious that I had to go see my daughter who is experiencing gastro at the moment, and she woke up feeling really unwell, but she's all settled now and she's good to go. So I sincerely apologize, Dina, for that little interruption. And
No,
quite
don't be
funny, we were talking
sorry.
about the gut. We're talking about the gut. So
Coincidentally,
so
right,
you
we were talking about the gut and how it can affect other areas of the body potentially, and then your poor daughter, which is happy to go ahead with our podcast tonight.
she
Yeah,
is
we sought
she
her permission. She said, "Go ahead." So,
she does, and she actually wants to be a contributing guest, so she can hold on. Just hold on, I'll be with you. Okay, you can go to the toilet.
so
I
cute.
guess this is
So
also the reality of parenthood. There she is, she made an appearance. The reality of parenthood and trying to do something of goodwill for families too. Anyway,
totally.
okay,
Yeah.
so back to,
Yes.
you said that person that started with H, he said
Oh,
hip.
Hippocrates. Yes, Hippocrates coined the term "all disease begins in the gut." He also coined the term "let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food," which is my mantra as a nutritionist. So food is medicine. Um, but yeah, so the gut is definitely a place where it can be viewed as the root cause of many, many diseases. So I often, for certain diseases such as anxiety, there is definitely a gut brain
Mm.
connection. And that's a very well established fact within the research. over the last, 50 years especially. There was a gut-brain connection, there was a gut-skin connection, there was a gut hormone connection, gut-thyroid connection, pretty much many different axes between the gut and various other systems within the body, and certainly the nervous system. So yeah, often the main place that I often start most of my investigations is actually from the gut. And I do that with asking the client questions, simple questions about, gut symptoms and so on. And then if I want to look into that further, that's when I will call upon using a gut microbiome test to do further investigations about the gut microbiome, which is central to health and is at the forefront of medicine these days. Everyone's hearing about the gut microbiome. And so that is where I start most of my investigations with many clients.
You mentioned the word gut, and it's like the trending word at the moment. How about the
Mm,
concept of inflammation? What's that? How does that relate to the gut health? But how does the ripple effect of inflammation occur into the body and presents as some other, I wouldn't say difficulties, but other, not even challenges, like illnesses because of
yeah,
inflammation? Mm.
great question. Great question. And inflammation has been found to be the root cause of every single disease. And
Mm.
so, and more so these days because of the lifestyles that people are living, the foods that we're consuming, the high stress levels in our lives, these are all very conducive to inflammation in the body. And so, for example, many of us these days, because we're time deprived, it's easier to reach for some processed foods, which, have a look at the ingredients labels, and some of the ingredients there are unrecognizable. So, yeah, it's a matter of looking at the foods that you're consuming, the foods that you're feeding your children as well, and trying to avoid these sorts of inflammatory foods. And the inflammatory foods to look out for that can
Mm.
create inflammation or even exacerbate inflammation are refined sugars, which are very common in a lot of people's pantries,
Mm.
processed foods, as I mentioned, and a lot of processed seed oils, which many people are using a lot of these days. And generally, what we find in a lot of restaurants, cafes, they tend to use a lot of these cheaper, refined uh, seed oils, and these
Mm.
are, you know, catalysts for inflammation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned the easily accessible foods because we're on the go all the time. Now, being a busy parent myself, we do get stuck in the loophole of whatever's easily accessible and quick and easy to use. As a busy parent, but also a busy parent of special needs children, you mentioned looking at the back of a carton or even the box to help you out. What are easily accessible foods that we can use more frequently to support or reduce inflammation, but also to support our gut health?
Yeah. So, and this is something that I come across in many of the workshops that I provide to parents. But a simple way to look at it is when we look at the design of a supermarket, usually the perimeter is, where all the whole foods are kept. So you start
Mm.
in Australia and pretty much around the world, really, most supermarkets are designed in the same fashion. So as soon as you walk in, you're in the fruit and veg, produce section. So spending majority of your time there when you are shopping. So, your fruits, your vegetables, making them colorful and abundant, trying to
Mm.
get a variety into your trolley, and then onto your plate, obviously. And then trying to stay around the perimeter. So around the perimeter, you'll find your eggs, you'll find your meats, you'll find some of your frozen produce, dairy, that sort of thing. And try to stay away from the middle aisles, which are mostly canned, packaged, processed. These are the types of foods that, as we said, can tend to create inflammation, and inflammation
Mm.
can lead to disease, malnutrition, poor energy levels, and so forth. So, what I often say to parents is what you put on your shopping list is,
Mhm.
start off with. So, I will give them a list of foods to try to include more of in their diet. And so, start off with that list, put that into your trolley, put that into your fridge and pantry, and that there's a higher chance that you're going to be consuming
Using
those
it.
foods.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And you know what came back to my mind as we were talking? Remember the triangle or the pyramid that we were taught at primary school with all the
Yes.
grains at the bottom, I think, and then the meats and the eggs are up the top, or like as a don't eat it as often food. Was it the eggs at
N-
the top?
No, it
Obviously the
was the
sweets were at
fat.
the top,
It was
yeah.
it was the fats and the sugars usually at the top. Yes.
And so just even reflecting on that, has that slightly changed now when we're looking at our gut health? Because I think grains and all that were at the bottom of the pyramid as something we should consume regularly. But now, even reflecting on myself, those foods are a big reduce as much as you can, but put more of the vegetables and meats and so forth at the bottom.
True. Well, it's actually funny that you bring that up. I think recently Jordan Peterson, uh,
Yeah.
you know,
Love him.
I love him too. There was a post that he recently was speaking on about the food pyramid and a little bit of controversy around it. So as a clinical nutritionist, I work under
Mm,
the naturopathic model, which is looking at you as an individual. And so growing up with that food pyramid, as you mentioned, it was like 7 to 8 grains a day. And
yeah,
then
yeah.
you had your vegetables and your meats, and then um, yeah, the sometimes foods at the top. But essentially, yeah, we need to almost, reverse that in a way and sort of like turn it upside down. So not everyone um, needs these sorts of foods. For example,
Mm,
if you're going to be eating 7 to 8 grains following that food pyramid and you have a gluten intolerance, or you have diabetes,
mm,
or some metabolic issue, you don't want to be eating that many grains because grains can turn into starch, which is converted to sugar in the body. And so that's not for everyone. And so what I do as a holistic practitioner is I look at you and personalize a prescription diet for your particular needs, looking at your bloods, your blood tests, looking at your hormonal tests, for example, looking at what's happening in your gut. If you have a leaky gut, for example,
mm,
or gut permeability, you need to stay away from gluten. You know, I'm not one of
mm.
those practitioners that says, all gluten is evil, all dairy is evil. I will say all sugar is evil, but all refined sugar is evil. But yeah, it's a case by case perspective, and so that's where like a one size fits all approach certainly does not work. And I say that when I'm pointing to the pyramid. So yeah. Yeah, and I hope
Uh,
that a lot of people so they listen to their body. You said that earlier. It's a matter of
Yeah.
listening to your body, and when you don't understand, when you can't hear what it's trying to tell you, but you're still feeling some kind of poor health issue, that's when it's time to sort of see a practitioner who can further investigate what's happening and give you some more direction.
Yeah, I have a few questions to ask. The first one is, why is there such resistance against going down the holistic path? Yeah, I know this might be even a bit controversial to discuss, but is it more because of the medical model that we're, I wouldn't say conditioned, but constantly fed that medicine is best and this is the way we should go? Like, or is it like when even when medicine's always encouraged, what's that called? Pharmaceutical approach more than the naturalistic approach. Why is there such resistance with overall in society to not go down the naturalistic path or
Hmm.
holistic path?
Yeah, and it can be controversial. Um,
It is.
but
It's
yeah.
like it gets you thinking as to why, but also having an open mindset of it. Not saying the prescription path is wrong, but
Mm,
more why is there such resistance to going down the holistic path?
yeah. And generally, this is a conversation that I had very recently with a patient of mine. And basically, what I feel that comes down to is, again, growing up with, the food pyramid, growing up
Mhm.
with the understanding that when you get sick, you go and you see a doctor, you know. And so, yeah, it comes back to this ingrained programming from our
Mm,
childhood, from our parents, even. That if you go see a naturopath, if you go see a clinical nutritionist, they're all a bunch of quacks. That can't help you. You need medicine to
mm,
fix this issue. And what and by the same token, when we look at doctors today, if you ask them, how much time have you spent training in nutritional medicine? How much time did you spend at university training in nutrition? And they will say minimal hours or maybe
Mm,
1 week of
mm,
training. And so, you know, um, not demonizing the medical system, but it comes down to ignorance at the end of the day.
mm,
And so a lot of the people within the medical system are completely ignorant to the power of foods, to the power of herbs, to be able to
mm,
treat people and even prevent disease. And so they are the ones that have the spotlight. It's the medical world, it's the doctors, it's the professors, it's the hospital system that's governed
mm,
by Medicare for us in Australia, and people have access to these free services through bulk billing. And so, of course, it also comes back to a financial a
mm.
financial
Yeah.
means as well. And so this is where a lot of clients that I see, for example, they are probably within the higher socioeconomic group, um,
Mm,
and it's purely because some parents, for example, with multiple children, it would be a stretch of their budget to come and see someone privately, and then have
mm,
to pay for healthy organic foods, potential supplements, that sort of thing. Sometimes it's just easier to rely on the medical system, even though in the long term it's not going to be something that's going to be sustainable for them.
mm, mm. You touched really good points. Thank you for that. Do you feel with the rise of social media and with many people having access to different platforms that the shift is becoming more aware of the benefits of holistic health and moving away from some aspects of the medical world?
Most definitely. And most people who come to see me, they will be quoting, Barbara O'Neill, who's
Mm,
become, you know, a hit on social media. People like Dr. Gundry, who's anti-lectin. People like Dr. Hyman. People are constantly listening to podcasts these days,
mm,
and so they are more aware. And there's also, people on Instagram, Facebook, social media who have opened up the doors and opened up the eyes to people who would not ordinarily be seeking this information. And
mm,
so it
mm,
has been really helpful for people like myself, my colleagues. We finally feel like people are understanding everything that we've been preaching for such a long time. But because of social media, it's only just come to the fore now, and people are really trying to understand how beneficial natural health and healing
mm.
can be for themselves and for their families.
And this is why I love bringing you on to Wine with Wita, just to give parents or whoever's listening just that extra perspective that if you're feeling that you aren't listening to your body or your needs aren't being met, maybe holistic, naturalistic approach is probably an approach that you need to consider to
Mm.
really get down to the root, as you said earlier, the root of your challenges and difficulties that you're experiencing to find out why you're this symptomatic in some areas. So thank you for
Most
sharing your wisdom,
definitely.
Gina.
No, of course. It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure.
Uh, Now I want to talk as a mum, and I'm sure many mums are on here listening. As I said earlier, I'm close to 40 and the concept of perimenopause is coming up. Let's talk about hormone health and how it's so important to understand your menstrual cycle
Mhm.
and why understanding your hormones is important for not only for your overall wellness, but as you go down the path or close to menopause.
Yeah. So hormones are integral. So,
Mm,
and what a lot of people don't realize is we think of hormones as just the sex hormones, so the various different types of estrogens, progesterone, and androgens such as testosterone in males and females. Uh, but there are other types of hormones that we don't realize can influence these particular hormones, such as cortisol, which is the stress hormone.
mhm.
And these days, cortisol is the key player that is creating a lot of the chaos that we see today in hormone dysregulation, early perimenopause and early menopause. We're seeing a lot these days. And even if you wanted to take it a little step further, early menstruation. in children today.
Mm.
That's another
That's
big
another
thing.
that's something I wanna talk about. Yeah, 'cause I'll ask that question after you finish your info. Yeah, that's all.
Sure.
Yep, go.
Yeah, well, we're talking about hormones, we may as well, cover the whole
Talk about
gamut.
kids as
Um,
well. Exactly, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, yeah, in regards to perimenopause, um, so again, it depends on the individual, and there are variable factors that can influence hormonal production and hormonal decline. At the end of the day, it's all about balance. So I do run a lot of hormonal testing on
Mm.
women. There is a great test. I call it the creme de la creme of hormonal testing. It's called the Dutch Complete Test, and that gives me a good vast spectrum of how the body is ticking when it comes to hormones. So if we think about the way that hormones are converted, so um, yeah, there is a main hormone called pregnenolone, and from pregnenolone, basically we create all the other hormones. So the estrogens, the progesterone, which helps us conceive, cortisol, which is a stress hormone, all the various hormones within the body, and so pregnenolone, when we are highly stressed, um, there is a concept called pregnenolone steal. So the cortisol hormone can rob all of the sort of energy that pregnenolone can provide to create all the other hormones. And
Mhm.
so we're starting to see a decline in these sex hormones much earlier in many women who are highly stressed, men and women
Stressed.
who are highly stressed, who are
Mm.
chronically stressed, simply because that cortisol is is the most abundantly created hormone from stress, from a high stress response that's chronic usually. And
Yeah.
so, one of the main areas that I look at when I'm treating someone who has entered into, perimenopausal symptoms is, we'll run tests like that to see where her estrogen levels are at, where her progesterone levels are, and it also looks at cortisol levels as well. And usually, a very common pattern that I see in pretty much all of the Dutch tests that I do is high levels of cortisol, high levels of stress that's depleting, that's competing with the other hormones. So usually, very very common sight is today women have high levels of estrogen and very low
Mm.
levels of progesterone. When we enter into menopause, that progesterone declines. Um, and over time, the estrogen tends to decline, but your estrogen can still be elevated. And this tends to create symptoms such as obesity in women,
Mm. So weight
you,
gain. Yeah.
weight gain usually, and when it's
Mm.
estrogen dominant, so when you have high estrogen levels, even during times of perimenopause, for example, a great way I tell women to look out for estrogen symptoms are when you are holding your weight around, the back of your arms. We call it
Mhm.
tuck shop lady arms, for example.
Mhm. Mhm.
Around the bottom, around the bottom of the belly, and the chest area. These are very estrogen dominant places where the body tends to store fat. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, when we're entering into menopause or in the perimenopausal stages, this is when we start to see body changes within women. And so, a great way to support any kind of hormonal changes comes back to the liver. Many people don't realize that. So,
No,
again,
no.
it's actually looking at the body holistically. So, the place, the organ that actually filters through excess hormone production is the liver. And so, many women who want to clear out that excess estrogen from the body, um, to help increase the progesterone slightly as well. Starting from liver detoxification is a very good place to start. As
Mm.
well, yeah, as well as another area that many women and men are not aware of is artificial hormones that we can introduce into our body. These are called xenoestrogens. I don't know if you've heard of xenoestrogens.
No, no. No, no. I'm even just thinking, how can I detoxify my liver? I'm just thinking of all the ways, and I
Yeah,
don't think
yeah.
having
Well,
wine tonight's a good thing.
No, well, you know what? I've got an organic wine here, but still alcohol. Alcohol is still, it converts to sugar, and anything that's high in
Yeah,
sugar,
yeah.
is not good for the liver. But yes, certainly alcohol is not the best substance for the liver, because it is a toxin. Alcohol is a toxin,
Mm,
and any
mm.
toxin that we consume, that we put on our skin, that we are surrounded by, pollution-wise, environmental-wise, the liver has to clear all of that out. It's the best filter, one of the best filters
Mhm.
in the body. And so looking after your liver is a great way to help your hormonal health generally.
So how can we do
Um,
that? How can we look after our liver in a practical way as a parent or any individual?
Yeah, so generally, looking after your liver. Actually, one of my posts, my latest post, was all about liver and how it affects the various parts of your body, and hormonal health was one of them.
I'll look at that
Um,
today.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, foods that can help clear out your liver are foods that are rich in sulfur. Yeah.
Sulfur.
So, sulfur, and these are your cruciferous vegetables. So, your broccoli, cauliflower, kale, Brussels sprouts, cabbage. These are lovely sulfur rich vegetables. Garlic, onions, turmeric are very, very good. Also, bitter foods. So, anything that can stimulate bile production, uh, eating things that are bitter, can actually help to
Mhm,
clear out your liver, because bile is produced in your liver, and then
mhm.
bitter foods can further help to clear out the liver. Um, yeah, but one of my favorites, the most potent food that I love to utilize for the liver, is radish, especially daikon
Mm,
radish. Yeah, I love to make pickles out of daikon radish, and just eat it on the side of your meals. And also organic broccoli sprouts. So they
okay,
look
I'm writing
like
all these
they,
down.
yeah. So broccoli sprouts look like alfalfa sprouts,
Mhm.
but they're actually quite good to detoxify the liver. Yeah.
I find this just so interesting, like, and how detailed you are with understanding, like, the whole tuck shop lady arms, and I guess you start to notice this, you're like, "Why is this happening? I eat relatively well, I'm not stressed, but my body is actually saying to me, something's not right, something's off.
Mm,
You need to
mm,
look after yourself." And I'm grateful that we now have so much access to information to really dig deep and to support our health. Whereas back in my mum's time, how long ago was that? 40, 50 years ago,
yeah,
they didn't have access to that. And all they were going through, it's normal. You have to deal with it. But
true.
now, women now can understand you don't have to go through the challenges that women from the last generation went through, but now you can really support your health and live longer too and be happier. Which I can really, I love that.
Most definitely. And you said that magic word there. So, eventually every woman will go through menopause,
Mm,
but it can be, a more challenging journey, or it can be, a somewhat easier journey if you are listening to your body.
mm,
You're paying attention to your hormonal levels, and you're supporting your hormonal levels where they're at, so that it can be an easier transition. And that's
mm,
going to look
mm.
differently for everybody.
Everyone. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and
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 that's why we
obviously,
need to see you to get prescribed for your own individual plan, their, intervention plan.
most definitely, most definitely. And as I said earlier, so stress is one of the
Mm,
major factors as well. Um, Also disconnection from nature. So I've seen quite a few moms who are perimenopausal, and a lot of the hot flushes that women get
mm,
as they're entering into menopause, that can be somewhat helped and supported further to reduce those symptoms, simply by increasing melatonin production within the
mhm,
body, and that tends to decline. And a secret way that we can help to produce melatonin is, one, looking after our gut health, because serotonin, which 90% of serotonin is made in our gut, turns into melatonin. So,
yeah.
yeah, so looking after your gut is actually helpful to reduce those hot flushes. And also having that morning sun exposure is really important. So it's basically
Mm,
the pineal gland is, the area of the brain that helps to produce this melatonin. And often we're just indoors under fluorescent lights most of the time, wearing shoes, surrounded by four walls, disconnected from nature, and the body's really craving to be, to know
Mm.
what time of day it is, to feel the earth under our feet, which is what we were designed to be living with,
Mm.
and that is another key area that I see within my clients. And I often ask them about, how much time they spend indoors, how much time do they spend on their screens, um, looking at their sleep hygiene. All of these things add up, and
Mm.
we don't realize, again, when we think with that mentality of a pill for an ill, what tablet can you give me to fix my problem? But really, it's coming back to your body and looking at what your body really needs.
I find this so interesting. I love it, and
Yeah.
it's so simple when you really look out, but it's so complex to actually implement. And knowing what works best for you. We
Mm,
touched based on this where we're talking about hormones and how some young children are getting their menstrual cycle much earlier now. Many of you don't know I have 3 young daughters. One is definitely getting to that phase, but I've seen a growing trend of much younger girls between the ages of 9 to 10, maybe even a little bit younger, starting their menstrual cycle. Now, back in my
mm,
day, never thought I would ever say it, but back in my day, it was definitely the early stages of high school. But now we're noticing many young women in primary school getting
definitely.
their menstrual cycle.
Yes.
Now, this isn't by chance, I'm assuming. I feel there's a big aspect of nature and evolution playing a part here. What's your take on that? And how can we support our young girls going through this big, rapid change?
Yes. Again, it's you know spot on what you've just said. Yeah, it's as young as 8 years old these days.
Mm,
It's about entering into menarche, we say, when they
mm,
first have their period. And what we're starting to realize more and more is, the major change between now and your time, my time, is dietary changes,
mm,
environmental changes as well, using more plastics in our foods, in our packaging. So when I was mentioning earlier xenoestrogen, so xenoestrogens
mm.
are, they imitate estrogen in the body, and these can be found in predominantly plastics. So, just drinking out of a plastic bottle every day adds up. Mum putting your lunch in a plastic
Plastic lunchbox,
lunchbox
yeah.
covered in Glad wrap, plastic wrap. Um, Using those cheap uh, makeup that some little girls start to use, or that
Mm,
cheap sort of moisturizer that they start to use from a very young age. A lot of these are called hormone disruptors. So these hormone disruptors are called BPA, which we're very well aware of BPA free bottles these days. So avoiding BPA, it's not just the buzzword of the last few years. It's
seen that
actually,
word pop up. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, and a lot of people might realize, what's BPA? So BPA is actually a hormone disruptor that can lead to excess estrogen within the body, and that
Mm,
can affect both males and females. Um, Phthalates, which are very commonly found in our skincare, shampoos, conditioners, toothpastes, all of these products that we're using more and more now, and and our ingredients have certainly changed a lot more in these last 20 years or so. So,
mm.
we believe that these are the major contributing factors to little girls starting to menstruate a lot sooner. Um, so, yeah, that hormone disruption from these xenoestrogen products, but also when we look at chicken, when we look at these processed meats, they actually inject our chickens full of hormones so that they
Mm.
can,
I've heard of that. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so they can grow a lot faster. Also, the dairy that we're drinking today. So they will inject hormones into the cows so that because cows can only produce milk when they're pregnant,
Babies. Yeah.
right? And so they're constantly injecting hormones into cows and impregnating them so that they can produce milk. So we go ahead and drink all of these milks, we eat these meats, and it's a
Mm.
roll-on effect. And so, because the whole manufacturing process has changed, foods have definitely changed, especially within the last, 50 and even more recently within the last 20 years, which is why we're seeing a lot of these symptoms develop and changing our hormones in effect.
Mm.
Mm,
I love this. I feel many mothers or parents listening to this saying, "Can you tell me more? Can you tell me more? Because I wanna know more."
yeah.
You've advertised recently that you run workshops, so please
Mhm.
tell me about some workshops that you have so parents can access. And just a side note, have you ever considered running, like, masterclasses so parents can have access to, like, how they can support their chronic stress or even their hormone health?
Yes, I actually have. I'm actually working on something at the moment, Rita. So
Ooh,
I'm
exciting.
glad you brought that up. So something I'm working on for the new year. I'm actually
Yep.
working with someone to help me develop a lot of this knowledge that many people, they're constantly craving more knowledge. And I realize that,
Mm.
when people come to see me, they really do feel that support and a lot of those aha moments of, things that are,
Mhm.
common knowledge for me that I've been studying, dedicating my last 10 years to study. You need to share this information. And so to be able to share it within a masterclass or a course,
Mhm.
that's the goal, so that I can help more people out there with, because information is power.
Power,
um,
absolutely.
most
Yeah,
definitely. And so to
absolutely.
to empower other parents, to empower other women and dads, and whoever wants to change their health and their life for the better. That's
And they
definitely
just
the
follow
goal.
I'm sure you advertise it all on your social media account. Yeah,
Most
yeah.
definitely, most definitely. But going back to workshops in Sydney, so I am actually working with a health clinic in Melbourne. I haven't actually told
Mhm.
you this yet, but
Ooh, this
I'll be
is that from the
yeah.
conference that you went to not long ago?
Yeah, so I made some great connections when I went to the conference in
Fabulous.
Melbourne, and there's a really great health clinic that I'm in love with over there. Um, that has been sorry, I just got to pop up on my screen.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, so basically they have offered me to teach some courses over there. So my first course will be happening, God willing, end of next month. It'll
Oh,
be a
wow,
course.
that's soon. I thought next
Yeah.
year.
No, 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 no. So,
Oh, brilliant.
I'll be flying to Melbourne just to give this short course, at a clinic there called 104 Health, and it's a beautiful clinic in the St Kilda area that, yeah, so I'll be speaking on gut health, surprise, surprise, and inflammatory bowel disease specifically. So that's what my talk will be based
Wow.
on. That's in Melbourne. However, in Sydney, I have been working over the last year with Help You Cope, who is
Yes, lovely Jolene.
with
Yeah,
Jolene,
we love
yes.
her.
And so I've been running workshops with her, for the mums of kids with special needs, particularly. And yeah, so helping them understand more about their health and how to support their own health needs. And so so a lot of Jolene's work with Help You Cope is about supporting mums with their kids and
Mm.
offering them different services to help support their kids. But where I come on board is, so how do we help mums look after themselves and their own
Mm.
health? So watch
Dina,
out
you're
for those
just a gift
workshops
that
next
keeps
year.
on you're just a gift that keeps on giving. Thank you for sharing it, and I'm sure many parents will just love it, and thank you for coming on Wine with Wita.
Thank
You
you.
you also said you offer if parents don't feel comfortable going to a workshop platform or even, have the time, do you offer one-to-one consultations as well?
Most definitely. So, majority of my work at the moment is running, seeing parents and clients, face to face in my clinic and ride, or Zoom consultations online, which I find is a lot easier for parents.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, they can easily book in a consultation with me through my website, or have a chat with me. They can send me an email to let me know more about their issues and what their health concerns are, and we can definitely organise a chat.
And just as a note, Ride based in Sydney, New South Wales. So if
Um,
you can't access Gina here, you can contact her and she can I'm assuming offer one-to-one online Zoom consultations as well.
Most definitely. So I do see patients from all over Australia and New Zealand and even the USA as well.
Dina, thank you so much for coming on here on Wine with Rita. It has been apologies for the disruption of my youngest daughter,
No,
but
not at all. Thank
it
you.
all
Thank you so much.
intertwined well.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure to be here with you. I feel like time just flew right by,
It just flew. I
as
feels like
usual.
you nearly like nearly an hour's of recording. But
Yes.
before we finish up, I ask all my guests this question, and I haven't told you
Mm,
the question. But every morning I tell myself a word, and
mhm,
it is my promise to myself to carry out that word to make a better version of myself. Now, today I didn't do it because of motherhood and manic, but in the past I've used the words hydrate, grace, be kind to yourself, positivity, like just to keep my mood better. So,
mhm.
Deena, what word would you tell yourself today to make your day better tomorrow?
Definitely, you are loved.
Oh, that is so beautiful.
Yeah, I think, and especially when it comes to parents in the context that we've been talking about, self love is really important. And if we start with self love to care for ourselves, then we can be in that position to give it to others, especially our children. And so, yeah, I think it's important to be able to give from a full cup, and we can't give to others until we've helped ourselves. So, yeah, definitely, you are loved, and go out and share that love.
Oh, and I love you for coming on here today. Thank you, and for
Oh,
sharing
I
all
love
of
you
this.
too. I love you too, Reets. Thank you.
Thank you, Deena, and thank you everyone for listening to another useful and very insightful episode of Wine with Wita. And please do reach out to Deena on her social media platform or website, which I'll put in the show notes. And remember, you need to nourish for good health and listen to your body too. Anything else, Deena, before we finish up?
No, you said that very nicely.
You've taught me well. Thank you. All right,
Absolutely.
everyone. Thank you again. And I look forward to providing another episode of Wine with Rita really soon. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Wine with Wita. I hope you found some new inspiration, learnt something new, or gained a fresh perspective. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd be so grateful if you please leave a 5-star review, as it really helps the show get in the ears of new listeners, plus it takes 5 seconds. If you're keen for more strategies and insights, then head over to Instagram and follow RS Speech Pathology.